Kamala Harris is on her first foreign trip as U.S. Vice President. Her mission is to address undocumented migration to the U.S. by tackling root causes, including poverty and political oppression. Harris has now arrived in Mexico City for talks with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. She traveled from Guatemala, where she offered a message of hope to the people of the country, but discouraged them from trying to cross into the U.S.
At the same time, I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come.
Well, one of the disagreements that President López Obrador and U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will discuss on Tuesday is how to resolve the migration crisis. Mexico has been pressuring Washington to increase investment in Central America to curb the tide of migration from there. DW reporter Aitor Saez traveled to the city of Tapachula in southern Mexico near the border to Guatemala. It's one of the key arrival points for undocumented migrants from Central America traveling north in the hope of reaching the U.S.
Dania Rios traveled from Honduras to Mexico with her 2 daughters and 2 nephews. They've just been detained at a checkpoint in Tapachula and don't know where they will be taken. We arrived last Monday. We've been hungry and slept in the park because we had nowhere to sleep. Just trying to hold on. Nun Olga Sanchez has been running a shelter for migrants in Tapachula for 3 decades. She's noticed that since U.S. President Joe Biden took power, more and more women are arriving alone with their children. There's a bottleneck in the north and a bottleneck here. We don't know what to do, but people are still coming. Migrants are forced to seek asylum first in Mexico before they can continue their journey towards the U.S. The authorities estimate they'll receive about 100,000 asylum applications this year. That's more than double the number of last year. The paperwork used to take about 20 days to process. Now, it takes months. That's left thousands of migrants from Haiti and Central America stranded in Tapachula, struggling to survive. Several NGOs say it's part of a deliberate political strategy to dissuade the migrants from leaving their countries. The UN's refugee agency says governments need to do more. We are calling for a greater effort from all countries. It's not just one country that has to deal with this situation. We're seeing it across the region, and all the leaders have to be involved. Dania and her family spent all their savings to flee the violence in their neighborhood. Anthony's father was recently killed by gang members. The people who killed the boy's father are threatening us too. We don't want to go back to Honduras. No. Locked in this van and worried about deportation, they fear they've invested everything just to end up back where they started.
Well, for more, let's speak to Liz Shulker. She's a U.S. policy analyst at the Humboldt Foundation here in Berlin. So, Liz, this is Harris's first foreign trip as vice president. What do you make of it so far?
Well, this is a huge moment for her. She is coming from the Congress, a Senate background, and this is going to test her foreign policy chops. And she needs to do it very wisely. So kind of what I'm hearing coming from the administration is to set modest expectations, but a strong foundation. So they're not looking for her to radically change the migrant policy or our relationship with immigration, but to set things in place that moving forward signal the Biden administration is taking this very seriously, and Vice President Harris is the right person to lead that.
Now, Kamala Harris is telling would-be migrants rather bluntly, do not come. That's quite a turnaround from the welcoming tone we heard from the Biden administration initially, isn't it?
I'm not sure I would phrase it like that. You can both be more welcoming than the previous administration, also more focused on human rights when they do arrive in the country. But as the last segment showed, there's been a massive uptick in migration. And not only is that untenable for the United States, But this is incredibly dangerous. You know, the loss of life and the danger that they're putting women and children in is kind of uncounted. We don't really even know the full scope of it. So I think it's prudent to kind of go to the source and say, this is both not an easy trek and will not be an easy arrival. So don't just assume because it's the Biden administration that much is going to be different than the past decade.
But that change in administration indeed served had a pulling effect on migration, if we could say that. But aside from telling would-be migrants you're not wanted in the U.S. on this trip, what incentives is the Vice President offering for them to stay at home?
I think that was the thrust of the actual thrust of the trip, and to lay those foundations. So she not only met with government officials, she met with local NGOs. She held a roundtable on women's empowerment. She talked about 500,000 vaccines delivered to Guatemala from the U.S. So she's talking about these long-lasting foundations. She mentioned several times offering hope. So how can we go to the root cause and help with economic stability, reducing violence, and helping folks not even have to take the journey in the first place?
Let's talk about those factors driving Latin American migration to the U.S. Poverty, gang violence, bad governance. These are huge problems in Central America. What's the Biden administration's policy approach, Liz, to those issues? Is there a robust policy in place?
I think that's what's being rolled out, and I think they're taking it very seriously. The chairman of the Hispanic caucus in Congress, Representative Ruiz, talked about he's really pushing the administration to go to the root cause. And I think that's really necessary. There's going to be folks on the internet that are very unhappy with what she said. And I think they know that. They knew this was a risky thing to say, but they believe in a holistic approach that's targeting. There has been stability, economic, political, and violence in Central America for decades now. So it's going to be a massive overhaul. So this is not a one-trip glam stop that will fix anything, but how do we build a sustainable future, because they are our neighbors. And so I think you're going to see a really strong, lasting foundation of policies being rolled out.
Liz, thank you so much. That was Liz Shulker, U.S. policy analyst with the Humboldt Foundation.
Thank you all.